everyone, welcome to this new episode of our Student Spotlight series where we are able to showcase some of the work our past students have done. I'm Charlotte, one of the outreach coordinators here at CCIR, and it's our pleasure today to have Tuhina with us, who did our one-on-one mentorship. So firstly, can you just introduce yourself? So tell us where you're from, what year you are in school, and then what kind of your academic interests are, what made you seek out CCIR?
Yeah, so hi, I'm Tuhina. I am currently a junior at Franklin High School in Massachusetts, and I was interested in CCIR because I actually um, wanted to challenge myself more, and I had a previous experience through a business competition in writing a paper, and I really liked it. So I explored and challenged myself more with writing research papers through the one-on-one mentorship, and I had a great experience.
Right. And then can you tell us, in general, just give us an overview of what you looked into in your one-on-one mentorship, if you remember your mentor as well and where they were from?
Yeah, so I worked with Dr. Esser, and he was incredible. He provided so much guidance, and I looked into researching more about behavioral economics and mainly the impact of biases and heuristics in decision making in the context of capital markets. Um, yeah, it was great. We had this paper was mainly a literature review, and it was such a learning curve, but it was such an incredible experience and opportunity.
And did you have any experience with economics or with behavioral economics before the program?
No, actually. Yeah, so my plan, I'm currently a junior, so my plan was to take my first economics course this year, and I did this program the summer before junior year. So it was my first time working or learning more about behavioral economics or economics in general. It was definitely challenging at first, but um, it was such a good learning curve. I really got to just learn more about firstly how to conduct a literature review. And that it was such an incredible skill to learn because I definitely want to go more into the research and academia side of things in the future.
Great. And then what interested you in taking this course in economics? Like what drew you to economics or to behavioral economics in particular?
I was I actually thought I would explore more with this field, especially because I participated in DECA, the business competition, for the first time my sophomore year, and I loved it. Um, I did the written event, so I got to write a research paper about, or rather a written paper, not, I don't know if it's specifically a research paper, but I got to work with the business and look into their operations and learn more about how I could improve and provide recommendations. And that was incredible. And in that process, I wrote a 20-page paper. And learning more about the business world and writing papers um, really intrigued me to learn more about economics also because business and economics sometimes in my mind felt like they went hand in hand. But I definitely got to learn more about both in the process of this program. But yeah, I've always been like intrigued by capital markets and how they work, not really understanding it completely when I came into this course, but I left with a phenomenal understanding. Um, and when I talked to Dr. Esser, I really got to just lean into a different perspective of things, which was incredible. I came into this program knowing I wanted to do something with economics, not really, or business, but I wasn't completely sure. But after speaking with Dr. Esser, he really helped me look through a new lens and look at, oh, the psychological aspects of economics and capital markets have such a vast and great impact on everything as well. And it was incredible. I didn't go in specifically thinking about behavioral economics, but I definitely came out learning a lot.
That's so great. And it's such an interesting topic because you're able to kind of look at the intersection between finance, economics, and psychology or social science when you're looking
Yes.
at behavioral economics. So there's so many factors that play into it, I'm sure, especially it being your first experience with the subject. I'm sure it was just a whirlwind of exciting new information.
Yeah.
Um, okay, that's really great. And then Now, I know you mentioned before, but can you just reiterate again what you looked into? Maybe give us the title of your paper and then just a general synopsis of what you looked into.
Yeah, of course. So the title of my paper was The Impact of Biases and Heuristics in Decision Making in the Context of Capital Markets. And in this paper, first I went into like an introduction of how there's often been a little bit of a controversy between traditional economic theory, where they assume all rationality in decision makers, and behavioral economics, where you study more about the psychological impacts and aspects of decision making and how there are biases and heuristics that can have a more negative role sometimes or a more positive role, really depends on the situation, the circumstance, and how you lean into your psychological um, biases. And so through this paper, I discussed first about like more generally behavioral economics and listed different biases and heuristics that can have a role in decision making, discuss them in great detail. And then in the last section of the paper, I went into more detail about specifically the impact of those biases and heuristics, and mainly a couple specific ones like overconfidence, herd behavior, and sunk cost fallacy. And I really looked at those three, zoomed in on the impact of capital markets and often capital market failures.
Interesting. And then you said did you do a systematic review for your research methods?
Um, yeah, so the main research method we did was a literature review. Yeah, I went through and researched and read a bunch of papers, and yeah, I just kind of summarized and added my own discussion to that mainly.
Right. And then can you walk us through your findings of the paper?
Yeah. So mainly, um, like I said in the first section, I went through a couple of biases and heuristics, but the main finding that I made throughout this paper and really building off of each piece of finding, I guess at the end, my main conclusion was that traditional economic theory, like utility theory and like assuming rationality in all decision makers, is certainly like very important, especially when you're trying to find the optimal outcome and what could be the best possible scenario, but it's not always feasible. So behavioral aspects must be considered to be able to come to a more reasonable and um like probable situation, or like create more probable insights. So my main finding was that behavioral aspects, although are sometimes looked upon in a more negative manner, especially because they're taking you away from like all rationality, but they can really be used to your advantage. Sometimes they could be leaned on and used to your advantage to be more aware of your actions, and they can be really used as assets in certain circumstances. And so basically, the final conclusion of this paper was that using traditional economic theory, like utility theory, and using that in combination with like other behavioral economic theories, like prospect theory, and using it in a combination and using it as like supporting roles for a more holistic approach when you look at decision making
Yeah,
would
definitely. I
be
think that's a
beneficial.
great point. Humans are not robots. There are so many
Exactly.
factors that influence why we do the things that we do, and behavioral economics is a great example of that. Of you
Exactly.
can have all these theories in economics, but at the end of the day, humans will sway one way or the other based on their circumstances
Mhm.
and ideas. And you said that this was your first experience with behavioral economics. Is that right?
Yes.
Did you kind of know anything about the difference between economics and behavioral economics or these nuances? Did you know about any of that before starting the program, or what was it like learning that this was a thing?
Yeah, so when I first started this program, or when I was going into it, I remember looking into like the different fields of economics, like under like the big branch of economics and everything under it. And I remember thinking a little bit about behavioral economics and understanding on a more broad perspective that it is the impact of your psychological like perspectives on economics, but I didn't really know what that really meant until I started reading all of these papers and kind of use them as building blocks to piece together the whole story. And um, yeah, so like for example, when I first came into this program, I didn't know that in traditional economic theory, behavioral economics wasn't really considered. And honestly, that really confused me at first because it just seems more like tangible to know that behavioral aspects do have an impact on your decisions. Um, and trying to assume like all rationality just confused me at first. So when I started reading papers about that, it was definitely like an eye-opening like research process. But yeah, so I didn't come in knowing much, but I did know that it was like the impact of psychological aspects. But I definitely learned a lot more throughout this process.
Great. Um, those are great insights into your paper. So now we're just going to shift into discussing your general experience with CCIR.
Mhm.
So firstly, can you tell us what your experience was like generally in the program doing a high-level research project like this as a high school student?
Yeah, it was challenging for sure, but it was a challenge that I would never I would always want to do this again. I It was such a like a learning curve, especially because I remember my first weekend where I sat down and I tried to over the summer um really start reading these papers. I was incredibly overwhelmed. And again, that's why my mentor, Dr. Esser, was so helpful because he always like assured me that this is a natural part of the process. All of my mentees feel overwhelmed at some point, and all of them like through his guidance and our like resilience and wanting to work through this hard material, um, we end up creating a successful paper. And it's it was incredible to just challenge myself in this manner because I often feel like our school experience doesn't always provide us with these opportunities. We always have what we do in school we've been working on since we were in like kindergarten, for example, right? Like the same um amount of like guidance, if not like the same manner of style, like take notes, take a test, take notes, take a test. And this was so incredible because especially because I was always intrigued, what does it mean to do research? What does it mean to work in academia? And it was definitely an eye-opening experience, but it was incredible. Um I'm honestly, I think about often like my next research experience, it'll feel at least a little bit less nerve-wracking, but I can't wait to see how I improve over the course of my experience with research in the next couple of years as I go to college, especially because I look at I have my paper printed out in front of me just to look at the title, and I keep looking at it and I'm like, what if like I know I can do better in the future, and I really am so proud of it, but I just know there's a lot of room for improvement. So this was a great first step, and I can't wait to keep going.
That's a great outlook. And then similarly in that vein, obviously there are things that you have noticed that you would improve on, but what was this research process like compared to, I think you mentioned before you wrote a 20-page paper when you were working with that business. What was this process like compared to that paper or other papers or projects you've done in school before?
Yeah. For that paper, it felt while it was a lot of work and it was something I'm still deeply proud of these projects that I've done through the business competition, but it was a lot more, how do I say it, like relaxed in a sense that my research, like I also had to conduct a research study for that paper, and it was mainly like going into the real world, interviewing people from the business or looking up online articles, learning more about the topic that was provided. For example, I did it again this year, and this year's topic was how to integrate AI into your business. So it was a lot of very like casual online reading, whereas this was proper research papers that I had to read. Um, and it was so different that, especially because I came in saying, "Oh, I love doing that business competition. I'm gonna really um enjoy this." And I did enjoy this, but it was just so different. Like I wish I had gone in knowing I can't compare the two. This is just a whole new experience in itself. And well, while it did help though, because I had that experience of writing a long paper, so I knew how to at least have some part of it a little familiar. But yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Um, and then my last question about your experience with the program, what was it like doing a pretty niche course like this, especially with behavioral economics, a course that you wouldn't necessarily find or a topic you wouldn't necessarily find in your regular high school or even in your
Yeah.
first year of undergrad? What was that like for you being able to explore that?
It was deeply rewarding and very I still can't keep saying this enough. It was an incredible opportunity, especially like you said, it um in our high school, you don't really get an opportunity like this. And it it was really, really amazing, especially because I'm starting to take more economics courses now as I become an upperclassman at our high school, and they really only offer those for upperclassmen. And I it's really cool to find a new perspective, especially I was telling my family members the other day while I was editing this paper again, and I was saying that it's kind of cool because there are some intersections still between behavioral economics and what we speak of in my microeconomics class. But um, but like I wouldn't have had those insights and those perspectives in that class if I had not done this program. So it's very cool to see everything in a new perspective.
Great. It seems like you had a wonderful experience, which we love to hear. And two more questions for you. The first one, you hinted at this a little bit before, but do you think this course has given you any insights into your future? Has it maybe informed or shaped how you think of your path moving forward at all?
Yeah, I I know I mentioned this, but I do want to definitely explore more with writing research papers and um, continue this like process and skill of writing these papers through my higher education, through college and maybe grad school. But yeah, I certainly am also hoping to like it almost gave me an insight of it did give me an insight of what I want to do in the future for sure, because learning about behavioral finance and behavioral economics was so interesting. And I feel like I left this program feeling like, oh, I know that front and back, even though I know I don't. Like I know there's so much more to learn. And and I'm very excited, especially because this was only a literature review. And I would love to even go into more of the empirical analysis in the future too, and looking at other aspects of how to write research papers along with the literature review, which is a great building skill to have in the beginning. So, yeah.
Great. And then my last question for you, what would you say to someone who asked you what the value of doing a project or a program like this is, especially for a high school student?
Yeah, the value of a program like this is there's it's just so incredible, especially because I know we already mentioned, but getting opportunities like these, especially from such an incredible program with incredible mentors and qualified mentors, um, is not that easy to like it's not that easy to find an opportunity like this. And the fact that I was able to have an opportunity like this and learn more about this before I even go into my university undergrad experience, it's just incredible because now I remember even Dr. Esser would tell me that when I would, if I do have the opportunity to go and work with other research, pr work on research with other professors, they would just, they would really see the value in a student who already knows how to do these skills, even if it's not in a perfected level, just at a basic level, knowing how to conduct a literature review, knowing how to read these papers and summarize them and write about them. It's just incredible if you want to go more into research in the future.
Yeah, definitely. It's such an important building block, as you mentioned, to be able
Exactly. Yeah.
communities. I think that's great advice. That wraps up our interview. Thank you both, or thank you so much for chatting to me, and congratulations again on your nomination to our Spotlight series.
Thank you.